But Byron Young's another player I've heard a lot from you talking about him. What makes you like him? We're talking about Byron Young from Alabama. There are two Byron Youngs that play defensive line in this draft, one from Tennessee, one from Alabama. What has you so intrigued on Byron Young from Alabama?
Yeah, I think it goes back to I still need to see something as a pass rusher. As desperately as the Browns need a run stopping defensive tackle, like I need to be able to see like if I'm drafting you, you're not a two down guy, especially early. If we're talking second, third round, like I'm not super interested in drafting a two down guy. So that's where I kind of cool off on a guy like Siaki Ika out of Baylor. But what I see out of Byron Young is a dude. He's got 34-inch arms. So again, long levers. Pad level is pretty consistently low. And he has some of the best hand usage in the class. So if you watch his tape, you'll notice his hands are always working. Somebody hits him with the counter, he strikes back. And a pretty good idea of how to use them. If he gets into a dude's chest, like, okay, I got push-pull here. So he keeps his frame pretty clean. He keeps hands from getting into his chest consistently. And I just think he's kind of a rock. He's kind of a boulder when he is asked to anchor in on early downs. So when he's asked to take on a double team, when he's asked to two gap, he does it effectively. Heavy hands, nuanced hands, a pretty dense lower half, and I see an explosive player. So I don't think he showed out at the Senior Bowl as well as I thought he would, based on how his tape looked. But I do think he's going to have a good combine in Indy. And some of the places I'm seeing this guy mocked, like he's still going late day 2, early day 3 in mocks. Like I've talked to scouts who are like, yeah, teams have 5th round grades on this guy, and I'm just like, okay, like I don't see it. This is just going to be some place where I'm going to stand against consensus because I think this dude can play.
You sound that was me last year with Perion Winfrey. I was like, no, he's gonna be a 2nd round pick, and then he ended up slipping to the 4th round. Like it's every team has such a different process with this. Like it's hard to predict who's actually where on what board, because even when you're getting those reports of like, hey, this guy's sliding down some draft boards, it might be a handful of teams that they're hearing, okay, 5th round grade here, 5th round grade here, 5th round grade here. And it's like, okay, well, now this guy's going to move back in the mocks because that's what they're hearing from like a couple of teams. But it only takes one, right, to change what the heat is for that. So it's just interesting, this whole draft process. It's kind of like the NFL's version of a stock market where like it's all this stuff that's kind of built up on nothing, but like they can't say that. So we have to somehow put value in it. And the way they end up doing it, it ends up being like a lot of archaic systems that kind of hold this whole thing up. Who are there any other prospects that you feel like Browns fans need to know about going into this draft season?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a really good edge class. So again, I think the Browns defensive end might be on their board like at 43. So I think edge could be an area they go for sure. So guys like Nolan Smith out of Georgia, BJ Ojulari out of LSU are two more bendy guys. So not necessarily that big end body type that they've traditionally liked across from Myles Garrett under Joe Woods. But I think they're both really solid run defenders, really know how to use their leverage to set a strong edge. And I have a thing for bendy edges. If a guy can take a tight corner on the edge or hit a ghost move, it's like, yeah, that's my guy. And both those guys are flexible as they come. So I like those two at edge. If we're talking like getting into day 3, like Nick Herbig out of Wisconsin is another one of those edge guys who's got some flexibility to him. But he's 6'2" and 227 is what he's listed at. So he's probably 6'1" and 220. Like, so how can you play at that? Yeah. So, but what I could see is like, man, Sione Takitaki might walk like that dude could play Sam and base, still play on the edge and base. He could come out, like line up outside of a big end or even outside of Miles and some pass rushing packages. And you could still set that guy loose. So, there are definitely ways that Nick Herbig could play well at the NFL level. And I think his game is tremendous, even despite his size. So, those are a few edges that I like.
Are there any running backs? Classes.
Ooh, running backs. I haven't dug a whole lot into some running backs, but one guy that's really stuck out to me, I actually need to check his age because I think he's a senior because he was at the Senior Bowl. So yeah, he's at least a 4-year guy. But Bijan Robinson gets all the hype in Texas. But his backup, Roshan Johnson, is a really good running back too, man. Converted quarterback. He was recruited as a quarterback to Texas, realized he wasn't going to see the field as a quarterback, converted to running back. And is solid. He's 6 foot 225, can catch the ball really, really well. Again, he's not a burner, he's not a blazer, but he's got really good vision and really good lateral movement. He is already 22, so I don't know if that's kind of the kind of guy they're going to look at running back. But I'm a big fan of Roshan Johnson and the Tulane guy, Tyjae Spears as well. Really explosive dude. Really explosive dude. 5'9", 204, runs extremely lethal routes out of the backfield. Like this dude can cut it up in the passing game. So that's another guy that I'm like, if they go for a guy on third down, which they did for Kareem Hunt over the past 3 years, like he was their third down guy. But he didn't really move the needle for me in the passing game. If you want to go get a guy that can move the needle in the passing game on those third down reps, Tyjae Spears is your guy. And then Deuce Vaughn's kind of that same mold. Deuce Vaughn is tiny. He's 5'6" and 176 pounds, but he's explosive. Like he's fast. So again, if they're looking for a running back who can be that gadget slot kind of extension of the run game laterally to kind of spread the field out defensively or force the defense to spread out a little bit more, Deuce Vaughn could be that guy too.
Let me tell you something about the 5'6" dude that makes it to the NFL. You don't want those problems, you sitting at home with the 5'6" dude that can make an NFL roster. That man has been tested at every level of his competitive career as if he could do this, because 5'6" means you were short for high school, you were short for college, you are definitely going to be short in the NFL. And you know how they like to test the undersized dudes. I bet Deuce Vaughn has stories that his soul could tell. His soul has seen rivers. I always like to, like, when you look at a running back, I think there's some positions in the NFL where there's a level of pain tolerance that's not really measurable from pre-draft. And some of this stuff has to go to like some wacky like kind of theories on like, hey, okay, well, you got to assume this guy is tough because, he came from this and this and that, and I think Deuce Vaughn is one of those dudes. It's like, he probably gonna have a long career. I don't know if he's like gonna be somebody's starting running back ever, because he's just 5'6". I mean, even Darren Sproles had a hard time at that, like maintaining a career. But he might be one of the dudes that stick around for a while. Kind of similar to what was another guy who was short. I think he played for Cincinnati for a long time. He played for Tampa Bay now. I forget.
Giovanni Bernard.
Gio Bernard. So,
yep. So, Danny Woodhead's another one of those guys.
Those dudes don't go away. You know what I mean? Like those dudes, if they make the roster their rookie year, they tend to not go with Deion Lewis when he was around for a little while. Yeah. Those, I'm telling you, those 5'6" dudes who make it to the NFL, there was a level of vault to that you have to be to get to football at that point. You know what I mean? Like, because that is short at every level outside of maybe middle school, and that's only if you were an early bloomer. But that's one interesting thing to look at. I think the last thing I want to touch on is we are kind of aware that the offense is going to have to evolve over this offseason, just in general, and also because you're going to have to accommodate a completely different quarterback than what Kevin Stefanski has had. Baker Mayfield's game is not really comparable to what Deshaun Watson can do and has shown that he can do an NFL level. And I think we forget he has shown that he can do these things at an NFL level before. And then obviously there's very much differences between Jacoby Brissett. Even though Jacoby did a good job doing what he was asked to do, Deshaun's a little bit different, right? So when you're looking at this, what changes? What position groups do you think change in their level of importance from the Deshaun Watson led Kevin Stefanski offense versus the insert quarterback here led Kevin Stefanski offense?
Yeah, I think there are two. One, kind of that gadget slot, explosive playmaker in the passing game. One, because Deshaun can throw a deep ball. Like, say what you want about the guy, but the guy can throw a deep ball. So having somebody who can stretch the field, and I think the Browns were like in the bottom fourth of the league in explosive plays through the air. So like, there weren't opportunities. And I think as Amari Cooper continues to age, I think he's still a heck of a route runner and can get in and out of his cuts, but like, he's not going to be the kind of guy that stretches the field. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones really settled into the intermediate middle of the field kind of eater. Like, he was so consistent on backside digs, so consistent on stick routes on third and longs, like unbelievably consistent. And he doesn't separate well, so like that kind of has to be his thing. So they need somebody who can push the ball down the field. But the second reason is as Deshaun is extending, he needs somebody who can work the scramble drill with him. And again, I think Amari can do some of those things, but if you've got a guy who can cut it up on DBs as he's working the scramble drill to really loosen up, those guys out of their hip pockets, like I think that's gonna do wonders for this offense. Again, we saw like a rep last season where Michael Woods kind of cut up field, or like kind of him and
Cut
Deshaun were on
back,
the same
yeah.
page. Yeah, where probably would have been a walk-in touchdown if they were on the scramble drill. And then the second position I would say is probably offensive tackle. Blocking for these two dudes is different, man. Like you can vertical set for a guy like Jacoby or a guy like Baker, and they can step up into a pocket. Deshaun's going to really run you out of your protection. Like that's going to happen. So that's where I kind of worry about a guy like Jedrick Wills, who doesn't tend to finish plays. Like you really got to keep your head on a swivel as a tackle with Watson under center, because again, he will break his protection. He will put himself in the straight line of an edge rusher.
And even with when he had Laramie Tunsil, right, one of the most athletic left tackle prospects we ever seen coming out. He even had issues with being able to protect for Watson, because sometimes he will take an extra step in his drop, or he will take a wide step and end up very deep. I've shown it on some of the film breakdowns here, where he just kind of just blows his protection angle before he even gets to his back step, and it's like, oh, what you gonna do with that? So it's just a different thing where with Jacoby would be real snug, tight, step up, roll. Maybe he does roll, but he rolls like up and out instead of backing out and roll out. And then Deshaun has this weird thing to where the first guy almost never tackles him. Like he just, for whatever, it's like he has like grease on him. Like these guys just kind of spin off of him. And it's weird to see, because it's like you'll see this stuff with Josh Allen, but he's not Josh Allen's size, but he's just as hard to take down sometimes. And then sometimes you'll get into problems where like a guy gets caught holding, but Deshaun breaks that tackle anyways and makes an incredible play, but it comes back because of a hold. There's a lot more to worry about, I guess, is my point that I'm trying to get to the audience here. It's like, if you're the left tackle for Deshaun Watson, you have to worry about all of those things. It's like, maybe if I let this guy through instead of hold, maybe he breaks it, but then you don't want anybody to hit your quarterback, and there's a lot going on there.
And I think we have to leave room for grace for the tackles in a system like that. Like you mentioned, Laramie Tunsil gave up some sacks, and those sacks aren't really on him. So yes, the Browns are going to give up more sacks with Watson under center, but that's not necessarily a reflection of offensive tackle play. Again, the offensive tackle tends to take a lot of heat, and he earns quite a bit of it. Like, yeah, the left tackle does, sure. But like, there was a clip on a screenplay where Watson broke protection on a screen, and Wills pulled up. Yeah, he pulled up, but it's on a screenplay where he's expecting the ball to be out in space already. Like, that's not really on him. So I think there is room where we can say, like, yes, we will see more sacks. That doesn't mean the offensive line is playing worse.
And with the scramble drill stuff, I've made the point, or at least thought about this, where I think the younger guys might be easier to mold for Deshaun Watson versus like a DPJ and an Amari Cooper, who they are, right? Nick Chubb is who he is whenever he's running around, right? But with guys like Michael Woods, and we're putting a lot on guys who didn't really do much in 2021, 22, but like Michael Woods, David Bell, and then whoever they draft this year, whichever guys they do. Is that transition for them to be able to do what Deshaun Watson doing the scramble drill going to be easier, because Deshaun's going to be able to directly kind of mold them in the image of, this is what I want you to do specifically for me. And that's where you see guys who are very particular with like one quarterback, especially. I think you even saw that in his Houston tape, where there are guys who had productive years with him that you never heard from again after that. And is that something that you could see being, maybe he takes a liking to a Michael Woods, and he really gets working on him, and then he's able to get Michael Woods exactly where he wants him on these scramble drills.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Again, we're talking about guys like, Kenny Stills is a household name, but like Kenny Stills hasn't been productive outside of his time with Watson, really. Chad Hansen, like these are guys who are like, who are we talking about? And I think that's a solid point. And I think even in a full offseason together with even guys like DPJ is only in his fourth year, so he's not like some established vet that's like, this is the way I play my game. Because we've kind of seen him grow and evolve every year. Like, the middle of the field was not in his route tree until last year. So, like, I still think there's room for him to grow. Again, he doesn't get in and out of his breaks quite well. So, like, I don't think defensive backs will have have a super hard time staying in his hip pocket as he's working a scramble drill as a guy like Amari Cooper or a guy like Tyler Scott or Josh Downs. But yeah, I mean, I think just an offseason in general will help all of those guys. But yeah, those young guys in general, like I would say if they draft a guy at 43, like Watson's going to be in that guy's ear night one. Like I would have that feeling that he's going to be in his ear like night one and talking about this kind of stuff.
Watson's going to immediately send a text, make sure you have a passport ready for when we go to the Bahamas after OTAs, right? Like, because I don't think David Bell could go because of like he didn't have like a passport or something. It's like, nah, y'all going to need to come. We're going to have to get this work in. But interesting conversation here with Corey. Again, he's the managing editor at Browns Wire. He also has a podcast where he talks about the draft. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. Links will be in the description. Corey, thank you for coming on. Everybody else, you guys have a great day. Have a good night.